Thanks for finding us here on YouTube. I'm meteorologist John Dawson with this Fox 26 tropical update. Want to give you a little bit more of a dive into what's happening in the tropics. We just don't get enough time in a newscast to really tell you about what's going on. We got to keep things nice and brief. And so we'll have a little bit more time as we look at things for today. I will say, as we are overall saying that the Atlantic is quiet and the National Hurricane Center not identifying anything specific that is expected to become a tropical system. If we look way out in the Atlantic, just about as far as you can go, there is a tropical wave that would perhaps show some signs that it could do something, but it would be a bit of a stretch. And again, enough of a stretch that the Hurricane Center has certainly identified that tropical wave, but in the next 5 days, they don't think it would develop into any sort of a tropical cyclone. So their official statement of no tropical cyclones expected to form within the next 5 days is true again for today. But if you're looking for something to look at a little bit, you have to go basically off the coast of Africa to do so. And that is great news for those of us in the United States, because we're enjoying a quiet July. Statistically speaking, we will expect activity overall in the Atlantic to pick up quite a bit when we look into August, and all of our long-range outlooks still would favor that. Now, the Pacific has definitely, on the other hand, continued to stay a little bit more active, and we see that again within the last 24 hours of a tropical storm that has formed. This is Frank. We were talking about this yesterday at the same time, as it was an area that was being watched and was expected to develop into a tropical cyclone. It was identified as a depression, and now with the 4 p.m. Update on Wednesday from the National Hurricane Center, it is a tropical storm. Maximum sustained winds at around 40 miles an hour, and you'll notice just a slow, steady progression and strengthening as we go through the next several days. So Wednesday, 45-mile-an-hour winds. Thursday, 50-mile-an-hour winds, 70-mile-an-hour winds on Friday, and we get into the weekend and we're at hurricane status with 85-mile-an-hour winds on Saturday. And of course, it could kind of peak up a little bit earlier than that once we get into Friday. Only talking about 4 to 5 mile an hour difference there to make it between a hurricane and a tropical storm. But overall, this is the kind of track that we like to see, where it's staying away from the west coast of Mexico and continuing to head out into the Pacific. So that is going to be the good news with Frank, and we'll have something to point at and talk about in the Pacific, but we're not going to necessarily be overall worried about it. And we'll check off another name on the list. So Georgette is going to be our next name that we would expect once that begins to get closer to another spot. There's another spot in the Atlantic, in the Pacific, that Hurricane Center is kind of watching for possible development, but just going to skip that discussion today. And just remind you that even though things in the Atlantic, which is what impacts most of us, especially if you're in the Houston area, we still need to be prepared. As I mentioned, August is going to become more active. I'm not saying for sure something's going to come see the Gulf Coast, but that's a possibility, as we know, moving into August and September. And part of your preparations needs to be downloading the Fox 26 weather app. It's a free weather app. Go to your favorite app store. Doesn't matter if it's Android or iPhone. And you'll get that downloaded, and all the tropical information will come into there. Plus, it's very handy to have just on a daily basis, where you don't have to be in the Houston area to take advantage of that. So if you don't live in Houston, or maybe if you're traveling somewhere, it will still work great, giving you a forecast as well as that radar and any alerts that might be coming from the National Weather Service. And while you got your smartphone out, go ahead and go to your favorite social media. Punch in at John Dawson Fox 26. I would love to connect with you. We'll be back here again tomorrow with another tropical update a little bit after 4 p.m.